Okay. Today we're doing Daf Yud Amud Beis on the top of the page. Okay, so we were talking about if the Mavui has 20 amas, the opening is 20 amas. The Mishnah says the maximum amount of the opening for a Mavui is 10 amas. Let's just remember that the general Pesach is 10 amas. So anything more than 10 amas is already not a Pesach, it's a Pirza. Of course, when we have the Pesach opens up from the Mavui to Rosh Hashanah, we need to have a Koira or a Lechi to remind us of the difference between the Rosh Hashanah and the Rosh Hashanah. But what happens if you have 20 amas is the opening of the Mavui to the Rosh Hashanah, the entrance? So one answer, one solution was that you make that Mavui and split it into two Mavuis. How is that done? Take a board or a few planks of wood, which are 6 foot. The total should be a 6 foot depth. In other words, from the entrance of the Mavui, you'll put in a plank of wood, and then going towards the inside of the Mavui, you'll continue on with a few more planks till you get to the 6 foot. So once you get to the 6 foot, so what you've essentially done, you have split 6 foot. Daled amas is a Mavui, is the length of a Mavui. So you split this Mavui into two Mavuis. Okay. So then each Mavui has an entrance of 10, and then you'll find you just put your kaira and your lechi there, and that will do. That was one option. The other option is Inami. This is the second option. What to do again with the opening, which is 20 amas. The second option is Inami Rabbi Huda. Let's do like Rabbi Huda. What's Rabbi Huda? The Rabbi Huda. Okay, it's a different size Mavui. The opening is 15 amas. So what's the solution if the opening is 15 amas? Again, it's more than 10. So what is one of the solutions? So he says Marchik Shtei amas. You from the wall, from one end of the Mavui is you leave a gap of 2 amas. So Oisa pass and put in a board or a few boards together, whatever, a board, sholosh amas. So you put in a board which is 3 amas. So so then you have 3 amas board. After the 3 amas board, you have a gap of 2 amas. Using the principle of oimed meruba al haporotz, that if what you're standing is more than outspoken, it's still considered a mechitza. So therefore, you have the 2 amas are also part of the mechitza. So the fact that we have 3 amas standing, and right there next to it is a gap of 2 amas. So the 3 amas which are standing is more than the gap of 2 amas. So it's oimed meruba al haporotz, and therefore it's considered a mechitza. So you have a mechitza of 5 amas. Then you have the entrance of the Mavui, which is 10 amas. So that you'll solve by putting a lechi or a kaira, which is considered a mechitza or a heker, whatever it is. So you're covered. So so you're covered, and it's okay. Now the Gemara asks a question: why dafka sorry? And so that's also the solution to the case of the Mavui of 20 amas, because the case of 20 amas, you have the option. Either you make on each side of the Mavui, you make this leave a gap of 2 amas and put 3 amas of board or planks there, 3 amas. So it's on both sides. So so on both sides, you've made a mechitza of 5 amas on both sides. So you're left with 10 in the middle. Or if you wish, you can similar to the strategy of Rabbi Huda, on one side, make it on one side. So there you'll put in 6 amas of board and 4 amas of gap. Leave 4 amas of gap and then 6 amas of board. So again, you'll have parrots meruba al oimed. So and as sorry, you'd have oimed meruba al parrots, and so therefore that 10 amas would be considered the 6 amas of planks which you put, the board which you put, is going to make the other 4 amas of the gap of 4 amas will make it part of the mechitza, and therefore you have to do the entrance of 10 amas. Now the Gemara is discussing a little bit, wants to the scenario of Rabbi Huda, of the 15 amas gap, and the Gemara is going to ask a few questions. So the Gemara asks a question: Vamai, what? Sorry. The Gemara asks, Vamai, why? Sorry about that. So the Gemara asks, Vamai, why does the solution of Rabbi Huda to make 3 amas and leave a 2 amma gap? Let him. It may be. Let him give another option. Let's have the other option. Yase pas amma v'machza. Make a. Why does it make 3 amas, like in one block of 3 amas of board? He should make next to the next to the wall of the mobile, make a plank of 1.5 amas. V'yarchik 2 amas. Leave a 2 amma gap. V'yase pas amma v'machza. And make then put another board of a board or a plank of wood of an amma v'chetzi, and then you'll have your oimed meruba laparot, because you have one side is an amma, 1.5 amas, the other side is 1.5 amas, total is 3 amas. In the middle you have a gap of 2, so you covered your 5 amas is a mechitza. Why not do it in such a fashion? It seems from Rashi that doing that is sort of the Rabbi Huda should have given that possibility. It's a bit of a leniency. It's a bit of leniency to do it such a way. You're giving him an easier option. That's what it seems from Rashi. The Tosfos argues that, on the contrary, it's more muhuder that way. If it can be done, it's more muhuder, because it looks a bit more like a fencing. Because you have a bit of fencing here, a bit of fencing there. It's a bit more muhuder if it's legally possible. Anyway, so the fact that the Rabbi Huda chose and it gave the solution was to make 3 amas in one block. So therefore, Shema Mina, so oimed meruba laparotz mishtei ruchos loy havi oimed. So we see from over here that oimed, when we say the cloud, if the part of the mechitza which is standing is more than the part of the mechitza which is broken, then that's considered a mechitza. And based on the principle of Rav, that Roiv is oimed, then the parrots is considered part of the mechitza. That is only if you have one side, the oimed is meruba. The meruba is together on one side, and that's more than the gap next to it. So you have 3 amas. The gap next to it is 2 amas. So then the 3 amas, they are they're sort of, they overcome the arav compared to the 2, and the arav compared to the 2. So therefore, the whole thing is considered the mechitza. But mishtei ruches, if you have 1.5 amma over here, 1.5 amma over here, that they're not. It's not. It's not together. It's not one block of 3. So therefore, you have to combine both sides of the gap to become. If you have to combine both sides of the gap to make it oima meruba laparotz, then we do not say that. So this is the fact that we chose that it has to be one block. That means if the majority, oima meruba laparotz, the majority being standing is made up of both sides of the gap, that they cannot combine and make this oima meruba laparotz. It's just, it has to be one whole piece and has to be meruba on the gap which is next to it. Okay. So the Gemara says no, there's no proof. The olam emelach. So the from here we prove that oimid meruba laparotz has to be not, you can't combine from both sides of the gap. So the Gemara says no, it's not true. You can, but the reason over here is something else, because over here when you have you put 1.5 amas next to the wall of the mobi, then you have a gap of 2 amas, then you have another 1.5 amas of the post. But let's not forget that then you have afterwards, you have 10 amas gap. So the fact that you have a 10 amas gap, so that means the 1.5 amas, the second 1.5, the first 1.5 amas is next to the wall, the second 1.5 amas, which is surrounded on both sides by gaps. Okay, the 10 is considered a Pesach or whatever. By the Poel, it's a gap. So since it's surrounded by both sides, it's surrounded by gaps. So then you need to have a stronger form of a mechitza. You need to have a stronger form of mechitza, and therefore the oimed merubah haparot is not strong enough. Then it's mevatel the 1.5 amas in the middle. So the 1.5 amas in the middle is bottled because you have the gaps on both sides. So the inside the oimed that you can combine the two sides. The osa avira the hagisa mevatel, and the avir from both sides is going to be mevatel of that 1.5 board which is standing in the middle. I just want to say something, that this cloud of that you have, if you have a gap on both sides, then mevatel, the thing which is in the middle, is, you don't always say that, but the piece which is in the middle has to be a more significant. That's what it seems to me. Or I haven't looked into the Rishonim to see exactly the exact definition, but it seems that the piece which is in the middle between the two gaps has to be significant, or in the Lashon Choshev, has to be a Dover Choshev. And it seems to me that what makes it significant, a Choshev, is not the expense of the materials or what's there, or the size necessarily. It's if in halacha it has a certain chshivas in halacha. If that piece in the middle has a great chshivas in halacha, then it's okay. But if it has a lesser chshivas in halacha, it's a lesser chshivas in halacha. So then it becomes bottle if you have a gap on both sides. So again, what I'm saying is that it seems to me that when you have a gap on both sides of something in the middle, of a piece of a board in the middle, it needs to be an extra chashivas to that board not to become bottled to the gaps on both sides. If there is this extra chashivas, that's fine. Therefore, for instance, if you have 3 amas in the middle, so the fact you have 3 amas between, it's also there's 2 gaps. But this 3 amas is a roiv l'gabe the gap on the side of it. If it's a roiv l'gabe the gap on the side of it, it doesn't become bottled because it has that chshivas. And I think also that will play out in other things as well. And also before we had that, for instance, we had the Mobi of 20 amas, who said you can't put a pole in the middle. That was yesterday's Gemara. The end of yesterday's Gemara, we said you can't put a pole in the middle to split it up to make it 2 entrances of 10. You can't do that. It's because bottled because both are period. If you put if you make a Mobi there, if you put in a board which goes into the Mobi of 4 amas, 6 foot goes in. We mentioned at the beginning of the shir today. So if you have that board which goes in 6 amas into the Mobi, and that is considered a Mobi in its own right. It's considered a pialoch, it's considered a Mobi. Then we don't say the avri on both sides in the battle. Okay, I hope the point is right. Now the Gemara says another thing. The Gemara says the Yasef pas amma. Okay, so another way. That's just this 3 amas. Why does it have to be in one block? Let's make 3 planks of wood of an amma each, and it should put like this: pas amma, 1 amma next to the wall of the kaisel. Yarchik amma, give the space amma. The Yasef pas amma, put in the second beam, second piece of wood. The Yachik amma, leave another space of an amma. The Yasef pas amma, and make another pas amma. So why not do that? It would, I don't think I skipped anything out. Yeah, so why not do that? Which so he says, so shmamina, the fact that we don't give such an option, shmamina oimed keporot also. So we see over there. So what happens in the last? So we see over there that since the gap is an amma and the plank next to it is an amma, because the gap and amma exists. So we see that if they're both the same, if it's equal, if the gap is equal to the parots, it's not kosher. We don't say it's oimed, because if oimed is meruba ala parots, the oimed thing which is standing is one of the parots, so then the parots is considered like there's a mechitza there. But if its exact measure, like this gap is an amma and the plank next to it an amma, or the plank is next to it an amma, so then that is probably the reason why we don't give this example of making three beams of an amma each, because each is an amma and the gap is an amma, so therefore then it's not considered mechitza. So it has to be oimed meruba ala parotz, oimed ke parotz equal, then it's not considered oimed. So that's what we want to bring a proof to that principle. So he says, no. I said, no, maybe 50-50 is mutter. If the gap is as big as the oimed, it's also considered oimed. Because you have the aver from each side is mevatel. Because let's not forget, because on the last beam, okay, the first two beams is okay, but the last beam is no good. Why is the last beam no good? The last beam is no good because the last beam has a whole 10 amas next to it. So the avir, the haigisa is again. Why? Because it's not so strong. If just to go back again to the point, if you have the 3 amas, you don't say avir the haigisa because it's more double choshev. But this, which is oimid kiparetz, okay, oimid kiparetz is kosher, but it's not good enough. It's not choshev enough to if you have avir the haigisa. The Gemara says v'yarchik amo. So it's now we have. So the Gemara says, you know what? Why don't you make it leave an amos space, then put 1.5 amos. Now the 1.5 amos is then meruba on the amma which is next to it. So then that should be okay. The 1.5 amos is more than the gap next to it of an amma, so that's fine. And then you leave another gap of an amma and put another 1.5 amos. Why put it in one block? The 3. Put then another 1.5 amos, and the other one. So that is more than the gap of 1 amma which is next to it. And then once you have roiv, because if it's roiv, it's that significant, it's more choshev. You don't say the avim kanam batu. You don't say that. This is the choshev. Of course, you won't say that. So why did Rav Huda not give that eitzah? Wouldn't it be better and more mehuder to make the gap smaller and break it up by putting by breaking it up by putting 1.5 amas and 1.5 amas and having the gap of 1 amma next to it, and each one is roiv. And that so v'yarchik amma v'yasa pas amma or machza v'yarchik amma v'yasa pas amma machza. So why not? Why doesn't he give that example, or why doesn't he say that as the tikkun? That should be the optimum. That should be the optimum tikkun, because it breaks up the whole the space into more smaller pieces. Sigma says, you're right. It's like better, and you're able to do that. But the kula highlight rabbanon. But the chachamim didn't bother to make it. I don't know exactly why, but maybe it's a bit more difficult, whatever. So chachamim said, you don't have to. It's good enough. If you want, you can do that. There's nothing to trouble. But the chachamim said, listen, if you're able to put 3, that's good enough. If it's difficult for you to make it in that way, it's good enough to do it in one block. Okay. Now the Gemara Sakash. So what do we have? We have right now we have this 15 amas entrance to the Mavoi. We've put in 3 amas. We've left the gap of 2 amas from one side of the Mavoi, and we put in a 3 amma block over there, a board of 3 amas or a few planks of 3 amas, and so we have basically 2 entrances to this Mavoi, one of 10 amas and one of 2 amas. So we should worry. 1 second, we have a problem over here. That maybe people will stop going. People will stop using the Pesach, which has the Kaira, and the Lechi, which is the one of the 10 amas, and they'll start using the 2 amma one. If they'll start using the 2 amma one, that means that the Pesach of this Mavoi doesn't have a kaira or a lech. So therefore, how can you say that it's okay when you've done this 3 amas? Do now that you have 2 psachim, so people might stop using that big pesach and they use a small pesach, and then when they do that, so that is a pesach, and that will be without a kaira and a lechi. So the Gemara says not to worry about it. It's not going to happen. The big entrance. Why should people stop using the big entrance and go for the small, narrow, uncomfortable entrance? So the Gemara says, people are not going to do that. People they have a nice open entrance. They're not going to go for the small entrance. So therefore, that's not going to become the main entrance of the Moway, and therefore the main entrance of the Moway, Taka has a Lokarian Alech, and that's fine. So the Gemara says, 1 second. Why is that different from Rav Asi? If we recall the story of Rav Asi over there, so it says that if we have on the side of the Mavui, we have a gap of 3 tvachim, never mind, 3 tvachim on the side of the Mavui towards the entrance. It's on the side of the Mavui towards the entrance, within within 6 foot of the entrance of the Mavui. If on the side of the Mavui we have a gap of 3 tvachim, it's not kosher. We have to, the lechi and the kaira are not sufficient. They're not considered connected. If it's less than 3 tvachim, we say love it. If it's 3 tvachim, 3 tvachim or more, and it's close to the lechi and the kaira, so that's considered that it's not kosher. The lechi and the kaira are not make it kosher. They don't permit you to carry in the rest of them over. So why is that? So the reason is because people will stop using this entrance of the Mov, and they'll go through this nice little entrance of 3 tfachim, and 3 tfachim is quite a squeeze. You probably have to squeeze quite much to go through 3 tfachim. That's usually about an hour. Anyway, but so even with the 3 tfachim, it already makes it. So they do worry. So why is it different? The case of Rabbi Rasi, which they did worry that you'll leave the main entrance and you go through this small, even though slightly not so comfortable entrance, and that's why they decided you can't. The Mov is possible. And the Gemara says, if it's further, just to remind us, if it's further back, this small gap of Gimel Tvachim is more than 6 foot away, then that's not a problem. As we're learning about it, over it. Yeah. So Gemara says, depends. If it's on the side, so then it makes a bit of a shortcut. So if it's on the side, it makes a bit of a shortcut. People might start using it because it might be beneficial for them because they want to go to the right or the left, whatever it is, and so they'll start using it. So that is taka a worry. But if it's the same entrance in the same side, people are not going to substitute the small entrance for the big. Not going to substitute the big entrance and use the small entrance. Okay, so that's the end of that piece of the Gemara. But we are still dealing with the issue of Eimed Meruba ala Parotz. And now we're going to go into another din, and that is it's relevant to Tumah V'Tara. So we know that an oihel b'negeya to Tumah has to be the minimum of a tefach. So if you have a piece of wood or stone or whatever it is, and it's above a piece of a kazayis of a mess, there's a kazayis of a mess, and you have, so that will constitutes if the oil which is on top of it is 1 tefach wide, if it's 1 tefach wide, so then it's an oil, and therefore it will carry the tumah to other parts of the oil. So if you have on one end of this strip of wood or stone or whatever it is, which is a tefach wide, it is underneath it there is a kedai mess, and further down also beneath that strip of wood you have something else. The something else will become tomei because of the mess, because it's in the same oil as a mess. And so what is the size of the width of the thing which is meili as hatuma? It causes the tumah to spread and bring under the whole area. That is the size of a tefach. It's less than a tefach, it doesn't achieve it. Now, we are going to be talking about an example of a portable toilet seat. So, portable toilet seat in those days, so people might want to have a portable toilet seat. So the portable toilet seat, one of the ways which they would do that is they would have, I guess they have a base of metal, a base or what it is. No, they have wherever exactly, but they have, it's basically you have this, besides the base, you have a two leather strips. So you have two leather strips to make it comfortable. So it's one leather strip, and then the other leather strip, which the person sits on. So the person sits on the two leather strips, and then you have a gap between the two leather strips to do the activities which is necessary in toilet. Okay, so this portable toilet seat, it's what do we have there? We have two leather strips and a gap in the middle. Now, what we want to know is if the tumor exais mess, which is underneath one of the leather strips, if it spreads over to the rest of the underneath the rest of the toilet seat. If it's in one place of the toilet seat under the leather, will that spread the tumor to the whole area underneath the toilet seat? Now, these toilet seats straps are not so wide, so none of these straps is going to be a tefach or thick, whichever you want to call it. It's the wide. Let's speak wide. So you have two strips which are less than a tefach wide, and so each one individually is not an oil. If you combine the two, is an oil, but there's a gap in the middle. Now, concerning halacha l'mishum Sinai, Hilchik Miralon, that what? That you don't say lavod when it comes to tumah, to the gaps and tumah and so on. We don't apply the dinim of lavod over there. So lavod is not going to be applicable over here. Okay. So nan hasa. Aslo is the skin, the leather strap of the aslo, the cholol shaloi. So the gap in the middle, even though each individual, there's two strips there, even each individual strip is not tefach, nevertheless, it will combine together with the cholol. So the gap will also combine, start from the tefach. So you have the oil, you have this strip, and so in other words, that even the two strips together do not constitute tefach. Both strips do not constitute tefach, and you'll actually be using the gap between the two to help it to become a tefach. Okay. My oira asla, what's oira asla? What's this asla? The skin which you for the cover of the basic kisa, for the seat of the basic. Okay, the kamam. So this Mishnah says the price actually, yeah. So this price says, so what is this the minimum size of that? Sure, there's some minimum size. So what's the minimum size of that in order to be considered an oil for tumah? So the kama is ke'oser of dimi. So Omar said, "Etzba'ayim mikan, ve'etzba'ayim mikan, etzba'ayim mikan, ve'etzba'ayim mikan, ve'etzba'ayim revach be'etza." So Rav Dimi, he said, "Listen, the whole size has to be 6 fingers, 2 fingers, the one strap, then you have the gap in the middle, another 2 fingers, and the next strap is also 2 fingers. In total, it's 6 fingers. So you have your tefa." He also Robin Omar. So Robin, he came from Eretz Yisrael. These people came from Eretz Yisrael. One of Dimi, one said it's an etzba machzah mikan, 1.5 fingers one strip, another 1.5 fingers the other strip. The etzba in the middle is only one etzba. It's only 1 finger. So it's 1.5. So even this is also considered an oil for mess. 1.5 etzba and a half, and etzba and a half, which is 3, and 1 etzba in the middle, 4 etzbos. So 4 etzbos is also considered tefach. Yeah. Omar le Abaya. So Abaya said, do you argue with Robin on the size of this, of how big it has to be in order to be moilech as a tumah? So Omar le he said no, because we're talking about different etzbos. There is the thumb, there is a regular finger, and then there is the small finger, the pinky. So I'm talking about the big fingers. The tefach is 5 regular fingers, 4 agudals. So the the thick finger of the agudal, it's 4 of them. So I think it's Robin who said 4 fingers, because he's talking about the big fingers. So the big fingers, so that is 4, which is a tefach, and and Rav Dimi who said 6 fingers, because he was talking about the small fingers. So 6 of the small fingers is the same as 4 agudals, which is the size of a tefach. Size of a tefach. Like I said, if it's the medium fingers, then it's 5 of them, whatever. So there's no problem. Literally, we don't argue. Amalei. So Abaya says to him, "Light kligitu." Yeah, you know, you do argue because yeah, you do argue. You argue whether we say if we can in order to achieve oimed beruba al parots, can we combine both sides of the gap? Before I go any further, I just want to say a word to Tosfos that that the gaps we don't. It's not just because there's air, there's space. There is space that is mevatel, the piece in the middle. Space itself is not mevatel, the object in the middle. Yeah, we can have a whole house and a lot of space outside all around it. That's not mevatel the house. Oh, I'm just exaggerating, but the space itself is not mevatel the piece in the middle. It's that space which you consider a mechitza. It's that space which is considered mechitza. So if you have, so you're making up a mechitza with space. So then there is a limit. So if there's too much space, a space on one hand, and this space is the mechitza, and that space is the mechitza. So when it's not real mechitzas, when there's no real mechitzas there, and the mechitza is made out of space, those spaces are like weak mechitzas, and therefore, if there's too much of that type of space, it's mevatel, the piece in the middle. So only that's what counts. The only thing which counts to be mevatel are the spaces which are considered like mechitzas and part of this mechitza, but it's the weaker, it's the weak parts of the mechitza, and therefore if it's too much of the weak parts, the whole mechitza becomes not a mechitza, non-functional. Okay, so here we have this. So yes, you do argue. It says that you must argue in whether you can combine the both sides to be mevatel the gap in between, or does one side, like I said before, does one side have to be bigger than the gap next to it, or can you combine the other side with it as well, mevatel the gap? And that's what you argue. So according to you, have a according to you, you said 2 on one side, 2 fingers on one side, 2 fingers on one side, and 2 fingers in the middle. So therefore, you don't have oimed meruba ala. I was trying to remember which is which. Yeah. So according to you, according to Rav Dimi, who said 2 fingers and 2 fingers and 2 fingers. So there's no single side which is more than the poros. So in order to get oimed meruba ala poros, that there should be more fenced than open, you have to combine both sides. So Rav Dimi actually, because he said that 2 fingers and 2 fingers and 2 fingers, the gap of 2 fingers and 2 fingers at the side. So the only way you get more oimed than poros is by combining the 2. So you say yes, it's possible. It is legitimate to use both sides to calculate the oimed meruba ala poros. Yes, if it's even if it's from shteiruchas, you need to make it oimed. That's good enough. The Rabbi meruach achas have oimed. According to Rabbi, no, it has to be ruach achas. Shteiruchas loy have oimed. According to Rabbi, the oimed has to be more. The one side has to be more than the gap in it. You can't combine the other side. That's why he says 1.5 fingers, 1.5 fingers, and 1 finger in the middle. The Isal, the Isal is because if you're not arguing, understand you told me you're not arguing on the size of the teppach. That we understood. That's Rabbi told Rabbi, we're not arguing the size of the teppach to say that. But if you're not arguing about this cloud of whether you can combine, and Robin agrees, if Robin agrees that you can, if you can combine both sides to be mevatel something which is in the middle, so the Robin hoche boiler you should have said like this. Etzva v'shlish mikan, one strip of etzva mishlish, the etzva mishlish mikan, another strip of etzva mishlish, the etzva v'shlish reva be'emza, and another etzva and a third in the middle, which will work out anyway to the 4 etzvahs which he wants to get to. The calculation works, and therefore, so then it would be a bigger chiddush because he would be telling us that even though no single side is more than the gap, but since the combination of two is more than the gap, that's considered open Merula parts. Okay, so therefore, I say Abaya is saying to Rabbi, you must be arguing on Rob or yeah. So he answered back. But Elamai Plaginon, if we argue, in other words, if we argue is and I should have said, in other words, if you're trying to say, if Dim is saying, you're trying to say that I argue, and I say you can't. Okay, Robin says you can't combine both sides. And you're trying to say to me that I say you can combine both sides. If you're saying to me that I say you can combine both sides in the middle, so then I should have made the middle gap a bit larger, and to make a better chiddush. I should have said because we're talking about the smaller fingers. We're not going to go into detail the calculation, but it works. So yeah, a small etzba and 2/3 on one strip, etzba shleishish mikan 2/3 on the other strip, etzba shleishish mikan level be'emtza, and then it would be equal. So then the gap I've large etzba'ayim which shleishish be'emtza, 2 fingers and 2/3 will be in the middle, and then I should have said this in such a way. And then you would see that the only reason why I make it kosher is because I combine both sides together. Because you said to me that I hold that both sides can combine to be the middle. No, I should get a big chiddush, make the middle space a bit bigger. Hello, therefore I also agree that only one side. You can't combine both sides to make it bigger. Never then, the only thing is, I say that if the standing is equal to the parots, that is okay. Rabbi, he makes the gap smaller than any of the two sides because, first of all, you can't combine the two sides. There's nothing to talk about. But even the one side has to be more than the gap, not the same. And whereas I say, I also agree that you can't combine the two sides to make it more. Otherwise, I would say a bigger hitch. But I say that if I say that only using one side, but I don't need the oimet be meruba ala parts. If the oimet is equal to the parts, it's also considered like a right. Okay, just in Yeshua Tzuras Pesach, if he has a so this is the Mishnah. Now we're going back to the Mishnah. So it says in the Mishnah, if it has a Tzuras Pesach, so then even the maximum width for the entrance to the Mobi is 10 amas. But if it has a Tzuras Pesach, that's fine. It can be even wider than 10 amas. So Gemara says, Ashken we find Tzuras Pesach. Okay, so the Mishnah states clearly that the Tzuras Pesach allows you to have a greater width than 10 amas. The Amaltra, the Mahanya, the Gove. We also know, we learned before, if we remember that if you have this Amaltra, this piece of wood on top, lots of fancy pieces of wood, then it'll help even if it's higher than 20 amas as well. What happens? The question is, does Tzuras HaPesach help for the height? We just saw it help for the width. Does it help for the height? And also the question, does the Amaltra help for the width? We'll discuss it next week.